Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Concepts Podcast, where two martial artists hang out and we give our life experience, not just our walk through martial arts, but more importantly, through life itself. My name is Sensei Bronson Long. This is my instructor, Master Autry. Sir, I know you have neighbors and friends that watch the show. But
I do.
To me, you're Master Autry.
Yeah, I know.
You always will be.
You're Sensei Long.
Yes, sir.
It's just, it's part of it, and it's part of our life.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's how I've grown to know you and respect you. And it feels weird to hear anybody call you anything else, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what my instructors are. To feel weird to hear their first name,
Yes, sir.
So.
Yes, sir. But I've been training with you for a long time. And now we've kind of got to a place where we can do things like this. And it's just such a treasure to me to be able to spend the time with you and have these kind of conversations. And it's cool because I get to have them vaulted on the internet forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here. You guys have been wanting me to do this for a while, and I'm enjoying it.
Yes, sir.
It's fun.
Yes, sir.
Tell some old stories and all, so it's pretty cool.
Right. One day I'll get my little grandchildren around and be like, look, this was my master.
Exactly.
And I'll get to show them these little episodes and stuff. So before we get into today's topic, how are you doing today? You had a good day?
Doing good. Been a real good day. It's a beautiful day. It was like 72 degrees here. We're outside. Me and Ms. Alter were outside most of the day talking to the neighbors. It was a good day. Enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. The weather was remarkable today. Actually, it's a really nice night tonight too. You walk outside. Yes, it feels really good. Kind of a springtime to kind of get you back from all that snow and ice and just dreary weather, you know. So really, really good. So you actually sent me a text message the other day and said, here's what I want to talk about on Tuesday.
Yeah. By the way, we alternate back and forth. One week he'll pick a topic, next week I'll pick one. So it's my turn.
Right. Yes. And you got a good one today. When you asked me this, I said, man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And the question is, what is the difference between a tough decision and a hard decision? Mm-hmm. So since you came up with it, I'll give you the honors of going first on that.
First of all, to me, a hard decision is pretty clear cut. Something you're going to do, you don't really give it a lot of thought, it has to be done. Mm. A tough decision has more feelings in it. When I say more feelings, I mean, you think about, you have to weigh it. I was probably your age, 28, 29 years old. An old gentleman told me one day, I was talking about making decisions in my martial arts school. He asked me how I made decisions, and I said, I just make them how I feel. He said, well, let me ask you something. He said, have you ever thought about doing this? Think about the decision you're going to make, especially at your business, your school, what the outcome will be 5 hours from now, maybe 5 weeks from now, or even 5 months from now.
Wow.
And I thought about it when I was young. I was like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But as I got a little older, it makes a lot of sense because, things do have an outcome. Sometimes we can kind of see it, sometimes we can't. But it does have an outcome. So before I get into a story, what do you think?
Well, I had a very similar answer, and I'm glad because it makes me feel like I'm on the right track. And the way I worded it in my brain was, a hard decision is when you know what you have to do. It's just not easy to do it.
Right.
Whether that's, I want to lose 5 pounds. And so, it's a hard decision today because I'm going to choose to make the right decisions. I want that soda, but today I'm choosing not to do it. I know what I have to do, but it's hard to make that decision sometimes. To me, that's a hard decision. Whereas a tough one is, you look at it and you say, I don't actually know what the right move here is. And, you have to take counsel and lots of thought, and you consider the matter diligently and say, I don't know what the good move here is. This is a tough one, tough call.
Yeah. That happens a lot. It really does. I'm going to tell you a story. I mean, it seems like I tell all the stories, but I've been doing this for 50 years. Had a little boy. In fact, he was I'd been in martial arts 10, 15 years. I was probably your age, maybe a little bit older. So anyway, excuse me, I had a school in Matthews. The little boy was about 15 years old, and his dad brought him in on a motorcycle. And his dad had the leather jacket and kind of a hardcore guy, actually really hardcore. And the little boy came in, he was kind of standoffish, he didn't want to talk to much people and stuff. So, I knew he had a rough life. And his dad was kind of a roughneck, and I'm sure he was a nice father, hopefully. But I heard he carried him to a few places that he should have been carted, but he just went in and took his son there. He shouldn't have been there. So Dad was real quiet, kind of a, like I say, rough guy. So one day, one of my instructors came to me, and this little boy, first of all, before I tell you that, little boy was getting more used to the dojo. And some of the instructors were kind of spending a little time with him. And I know one day after class, I said, "You want to help me clean the pads and put them up?" He said, "Oh, yes, sir." He was all excited about it. And I could see him changing from this little rough kid to, I mean, he's getting softer and kinder, and he was appreciating, "Hey, Master Archer, I'll see you next week." You know, that kind of.
Wow.
And me and a couple of instructors were talking about it, and I was like, "Man, this is why we have a school. This is why I have a school right here. This is it." So about 3 weeks later, one of the assistant instructors come to me and said, "The guy's dad's in the back row where the parents sit. In a plastic cup, he had a beer." I was like, "Not in my school, not a beer." He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Are you sure?" He says, "Sir, I'm positive." So I was like, "Oh, no." So I went over there and I talked to some of the parents. I didn't just go straight to him. I sit next to him and said, "Hey, man, I'm glad your son's doing good, blah, blah, blah." And I just happened, I looked down in the cup. I said, "Sir, is that alcohol?" He said, "Yeah, I've had a rough day. I'm gonna finish that." I said, "Well, you can't drink that in here." He said, "I've only got 2 or 3 swallows." I said, "Sir, you cannot drink that beer in my dojo." So you can go outside or either pour it out. He said, "Well, I'm not pouring it out." I said, "Well, then you're going to go outside." And it was kind of standoff.
Right.
You know, I didn't want, I mean, the best way to put it is I didn't want anything to happen.
Sure.
I wasn't going to back down. It's my school. He's not going to do it.
Right.
But I wasn't trying to egg it on either. And so he stood up, and I stood there, and he said, "Well, I guess I'm just going to have to drink it real fast." I said, "No, sir, you're not going to drink that beer in this dojo." I said, "My job is to teach, and we have no alcohol in here. That's a rule." So he walked to the door. He took 1 foot outside the door, and he took a swallow and finished it. You know, his son didn't know this went on.
Right.
So his son was getting ready to leave, and his dad started the motorcycle real loud, blam, blam, blam. His little son walked out and said, "Master Archer, bye. I'll see you next week." I said, "Okay, I'll see you." Never saw him again.
Oh, man.
You know, and those kind of things bother you.
Right.
I don't care who you are. I mean, you know, you could teach 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 students, but when something like that happens, to lose that kid over something so simple, you know. So little things do have an impact.
Right.
So that was a hard decision and a tough decision.
At the same time.
At the same time. That was, and you know, I still think about that kid, wonder where he's at, wonder what he's doing and stuff.
Right.
So.
Wow. What a great example of how you can really, because you knew what you had to do.
I had to.
You had rules, you have a standard,
Right.
You can't back down on that.
Yeah. You would have done the same thing, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's one thing that you've instilled in me as an instructor is that, you know, yes, sir. There's a funny story where I thought I was making a hard decision and I did the wrong thing. And I don't know if you remember this or not. This is so funny. We were running a test. This was the very first school I had. It was right next door to the school that I started training with you at.
Right.
And we had a little test in there. I had a handful of kids. There was quite a few kids in there at the time. And we had all those little folding chairs. They were sitting right up next, flush to the mat. I mean, the foot of the chair was almost touching the mat. And this lady came through. You know, obviously one of her kids or
Right.
nephew or whomever is testing. And she comes walking up to the mat, and she's got her little heels on. She goes walking on the mats and goes and sits on the chair. And when I saw her step on, I was like, okay, it's my job as an instructor to tell her no shoes on the mat. And so when I walked up to her, I was like, "Excuse me, ma'am, could you take your shoes off before you step on the mats?" She said, "Oh, okay." And she went to go sit down, and I went back and I stood in my spot as the instructor of the school. I was like, "Man, I did the right thing. I did good." And after class, after the test ended, you looked at me and you said, "Sir, how was she supposed to get onto the chair? She couldn't get to the chair. The mats were right up next to the chair."
I don't remember that.
Yes, sir. You said, "How was she supposed to get there?" She has to walk on the mats to get to the chair. And I felt so silly at the time. I was just like, man, I really thought I did the right thing upholding the rules. And that's when the very first time I heard you use this saying, and it is just burned into my brain, is that the young man knows the rules, but the wise man knows the exception. And there is exceptions to the rules.
There is.
And in your case, in your scenario, it's one of those things where you know that in this rule there is no exception. Mm-hmm. And sadly, that it's not your fault or the rule's fault that kid didn't come back. That was the choice of the parent.
Right.
And it's sad because you did the right thing and made the right choice, and someone else chose not to.
And the old saying is, just because you feel bad about something, making a decision, it still don't make it where it's a wrong decision. You can make a right decision and still feel bad about it.
Right.
There's something that you probably remember this. We had a kid come in there, because we did the adult class after the kids class.
Right.
But he was probably, I'm going to guess, 12, 13. He probably had more talent than anybody I've ever seen for a young kid. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, I do.
He came in, and you could show him a technique, and he would just pick it up like that. And you're like, wow, man. I could show him a technique that some brown belts were working on. He would just do it. I'm like, golly. But the sad part about it, this young man had the worst ego. He was conceited. Now, he held it to down to a simmer in the class. But you can tell his ego was just so bad. I mean, it was just horrible, conceited.
Right.
So I came home and told Ms. Autry, I was like, I could take this kid, or we could take this kid and really show him some stuff and go to tournaments and win all kind of trophies and stuff. But I made a decision not to do it. Mm-hmm. I didn't want him to contribute to his conceitedness, just being arrogant. Had he been a little bit more humble, I would have worked with him. Now, I'm not saying I didn't teach him. I taught him just like everybody else. Yellow belts, green belts, purple belts.
Yes.
I taught him the same thing. But, sometimes you'll have a little special needs kid and you'll spend extra time with them.
Right.
And somebody's, catching on pretty good. They get ready to go to a tournament. And I was like, okay, well, I'll work a little extra with them. But I could have, you could have, any black belts in there could have worked with this kid and made him, you know what I'm talking about,
I sure do.
So the funny thing is, I didn't do it. And I thought that for a long time. Did I do the right thing or the wrong thing? I feel like I did the right thing because I just I wasn't going to feed that. I just wasn't going to do it.
Right.
So me and Ms. Ultra, it was about 2 years ago, we were talking about this young man. I wonder where he's at. We went to a restaurant. He was in the kitchen cooking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he saw me, he's like, hey, how you doing? Just as humble and stuff as he could be. I mean, he acted that way.
Right.
I said, how you doing? He said, I'm doing good, sir. We talked for about 3 or 4 minutes. He had to get back to the kitchen and cook. But he came out and talked to us.
Wow.
And stuff. It was good seeing him.
Wow.
But those kind of decisions, sometimes you just, you do feel bad about them.
Right.
But that's what made me think of this title.
Wow. But that's still a good decision, though, in my personal opinion, is that took a little bit of sacrifice. Because it is like that. You can see somebody and well, I can really get him here. And then, yes, that is good for him, but it's also good for the school. You can get him to a level to where when people walk into your school and they want to try it out, it's not a bad idea to have some students in there that are proficient and are doing a really good job. Makes the school look good. So not only does it help him be a good martial artist, but makes the school look good. The problem is that when he gets good, what's he going to do with that attitude? What's he going to do with these newfound skills that you've given him? And he gets a little bit of spotlight. He's already got some ego, and it could have done some serious damage to the boy's life. Mm-hmm. You go out there with that type of attitude, it cause problems and have issues. And so, in my opinion, I do think you did the right thing there, because it's a hard decision to make too. Because your school could have done even better by having an extra talented student, but you chose the well-being of that kid and his future over the appearance of a school and having somebody with talent in there.
Yeah. The first time I really got tested on making a really hard decision at school, Ms. Autry actually told me about this a little while ago, about an hour ago, and I'd really forgotten about it. When we were in Matthews, did more karate than jiu-jitsu in the beginning. And so for a brown belt test, even the juniors had to break a board. You went through your whole test, you had to break a board. And it was a regular size board. It wasn't a little skinny one, it was a 1-inch board. So if you didn't break it, you didn't get your belt. Now you could come back in class and break it, and then you would get your belt.
Okay.
As long as you pass your test. So that was the very end thing to do. So I had 8 little kids. They were, just cool little kids. They were probably 8, 9, 10, 11. So I said, everybody pass test. To make it final, we have to break the board. So the first 5 got out there, broke the board. Number 6, he hit it 4, 5, 6 times, didn't break it. I was like, oh man. This hadn't happened. Everybody's always broke the boards.
Right.
The kid behind him, same thing. The kid behind him, the same thing. I guess they saw that. So 3 of them didn't break the boards.
Wow.
So all their parents were sitting there, and these guys had been with me for like 3 or 4 years. Their parents were good friends of mine and stuff, and I was like, man, I sat behind that table, and I'm like, I can't give these kids the brown belt because that's the rule. So I got up and I made a speech. I said, look, I said, you know, it happens, but this is what builds a man or a woman. If you're a woman, this is what builds our integrity, doing the right thing. I said, it's not that you didn't pass the test. I said, you just got one more hurdle to finish it. So we talked about that. Excuse me. So they came back to class next week. And by the way, the parents, they all thanked me after they said, you know what, that was ruled, they knew it, and we want to thank you so much for doing that. And I said, well, yeah, it really is not my pleasure because I didn't enjoy it. I said, thank you. They all came back the next Tuesday night. All three of them broke the boards. So I gave them their brown belts, and we all clapped and stuff. But, you know, a rule is a rule, and you do it for certain things, for safety. You do it because it's the thing to do. And you do it because you have to have a correct presence about everything. You know, it's got to be a presence, you know. It's got to be present in your body, in your mind, to do the right thing. And this is what makes organizations. There are certain things you can do or can't do. And this is what, and hopefully you're a good person and go in that right path. But it's hard. It's not easy. And I don't know how hard it is for you right now, but you've got all kinds of students, and there's all kinds of decisions you have to make.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes, absolutely. Those things are important, though. You know, as an instructor, and I'm sure parents are the same way, or anybody out there, basketball coaches, whatever it is that you do, you want to see your team win. You want to see your students do well. You want to see them do great. But you have to kind of ask yourself sometimes, if I really, really want to see them do great, sometimes that means I have to let them fail.
Exactly.
I have to let them fall short.
That's good.
And I don't know the real statistic on this, but I can safely assume that some of the most successful people you see in the world probably failed a handful of times on their way to success.
Sure.
I don't remember the exact number, but it's, you know, Dr. Seuss, you know, famous Green Eggs and Ham author. His first book was rejected to be published well over a dozen times. You know, and you don't think about that when you think of Dr. Seuss. You know,
he's the man.
He's the man. Yeah, he's the cat in the hat. You know, he is
the cat in the hat.
You know,
Literally.
So to think that he failed a handful of times, dozens of times to get his first published is, you know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to fail, and it makes you, you know, go back to the drawing board and get your thing right. And again, if you really do care about your students or even your children, you know, you don't want to see them fail. Nobody wants that.
Right.
But it's one of those hard, tough decisions where it says, okay, so right now this failure is going to build them up. This is where you
And it does build character.
It certainly does.
Absolutely
It
builds
certainly
character.
does. I've failed more times than I can count. I'll probably do it some more.
Yeah.
And every time that it's happened, it's not a fun experience. But after a while, you look back at it and you go, okay, I know what I did wrong now. We're not going to do that again. I'm going to do something different. And maybe this time it'll be the right thing, you know. It's really what builds you up.
Now, I broke another rule. Actually, I did break a rule for you.
Really?
I did.
Oh, wow.
Ms. Alter reminded me of this the other day, too. We had a rule years ago, you don't come out on the floor unless you're 5 years old.
Oh.
You had to be 5 years old. I don't care. And we had kids come out that they were 4 years and 6 months, or 4 years and 7 months. I said, no, they need to be 5, because if you don't, it's going to be 4.5 and 4.
Right.
That's just too young.
Yes.
So we went to school in, I don't know what the school was, Matthews?
I think it was Matthews.
Was it Matthews, Ms. Alter? I can't remember. Anyway, so your dad brought you, your brother, your sister, I think, or 2 brothers.
Okay.
And they came out on the floor, and I was like, and your dad said, what about little Bronson? I said, well, he's got to be 5 before he comes out on the floor. That's just a rule. He said, oh, okay. So I'm sitting over there, and Miss Autry never tells me to do what to do at the martial arts school. She's never told me anything my whole life. I run the school, and she says, you know, you run the school. I said, yeah, thank you. I'm going to run the school. She did this to me. I'm like, what does she want? She said, you let this little kid come out on the floor. He's crying. He wants to come out on that floor. I said, Ms. Autry, he's 4.5. 4 or 5 more months he can come out. She says, look, she says, I want him to come out there. I said, what's his name? She said, Bronson. I said, okay. She said, but wait a minute. She went and got a uniform. She got to that little dragon uniform. We got a picture of it.
That's awesome.
And then you came out there and you were just as happy, and here you are now.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
So I broke a rule for you 24 years ago.
I'm glad you did.
True story.
That is
true
so
story.
funny. That's amazing. Hey, again, you know, the young man knows the rule, the wise man knows the exception,
Exactly.
right? That's so funny. I'm glad that you did, because it certainly has made a great change in my life. It definitely helped a lot. I'm so glad about it.
How about at work? How are the rules and stuff at your work?
Ooh, you know, I have a cool job. It is a blue collar field. My day job is a blue collar field, and so I get to work until the work is done.
Right.
And you know, so it's some days I can be done at noon, other days I can be done at 8 p.m. at night. You
Wow.
know, and so and they're really nice people. They understand that some people have kids. You got to go pick them up from school,
Right.
and they're very understanding.
And they
of
know
that
you
type of
teach it
stuff.
too. At
Oh
night.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. They know that Tuesdays and Thursday evenings are off limits. You know, and so there are really cool exceptions to the rules on some things. If the rule is if you start calling too late in the day, they're gonna get suspicious.
Right.
But if you call them at 4:30 and say, "Hey, listen, I got to this job. It's a nightmare. I'm gonna be here until tomorrow morning. Is it okay if we just let this go for tomorrow?" And they say, "Yeah, that's fine. Just go there first thing in the morning tomorrow. Get it taken care of the best you can at least."
Right.
But at the same time, if it says, "Hey, you know, I had an unexpected bill," or "Man, my power bill was through the roof this month," or whatever, I could use some extra jobs. Is it okay if I stay out late today
Sure.
and you know, do some things and take care of this? They're like, "Yeah, for sure." You know, the rules there are very, very nice in that regard. It's a unique job. I'll tell you, it's very unique. Actually, I haven't told you this yet. This is pretty crazy. This was on Friday evening. I pulled up to the corner of Monroe and Windover.
Okay.
Okay, and I was sitting at the red light, and this guy pulls up right next to me, rolls down his window, and just shoots an entire magazine, whole gun, out into a parking lot, sitting right next to me. Yeah. I was so close I could actually see the bullets coming out of the gun and watching the shell casings. I mean, it's from me to that pillow right there was how
Wow.
close I was to the guy. And
What was you shooting at?
I have no idea. He was in a rental car, so it wasn't, you know, you could tell by the license plate it was a rental car. So I don't know who or what he was shooting at, but he pulled up and he started firing off into this parking lot over
He was
there.
beside you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But you
absolutely.
shooting to
Not at me.
no,
Yeah.
at the other side.
Right, so if me and you were in two different cars, you're him, you're shooting
Right.
through your driver's
Okay.
window.
All right.
I'm sitting in my driver's window looking at him. What blew my mind more than anything is I had enough time to kind of look around. Everybody else was on their phone scrolling. I'm like, there's a guy in public, broad
My phone's
daylight.
messed up. It's making noises. It sounds like a gunfire.
1 p.m. in the afternoon, and he's just unloading a whole magazine into a parking lot. So that is one thing about my job. And that's not the first or second time that's happened, you know, where you run into stuff like that. And so that is another cool thing about the rules is that if we are in danger like that, as it has happened a couple of times, they'll let you go home. You know? They'll let you leave. So,
I kind of want to go home
yeah, I
today.
don't want to be here anymore. So, but that's not to go on too long of a tangent about my job, but that's how the rules work there.
I used to work at the Olive Garden years ago. When I first started martial arts school, I was trying to work at night and weekends and stuff, make extra money, and make the main money until I got my school started.
Right.
And they had one rule: don't you ever touch the lights. I'm like, because you know they keep them low, low for a reason, make everybody relax. They sit there and they buy more food,
Right.
Well, this is years ago when they had a smoking section. Well, they had me in the smoking section, and this is when you could smoke in a restaurant. And people get through eating, they would sit there and just smoke cigarettes, and they wouldn't turn the tables. They wouldn't leave. More people wouldn't come in. I couldn't make tips.
Oh.
So I said, you know what? Forget this rule. So if you go in there and take those lights and just barely push them up, if it gets a little bit brighter, it breaks the atmosphere.
Right.
If you do that, you get fired. I said, well, forget this. I'm going to turn them up a little bit. So I go over there, and I had my finger just like this. I was going to barely hit it. Well, my buddy behind me gooched me.
Oh.
I took that thing, went straight up. It was just like, that thing lit up like NASA. It was just bright as could be. I'm sitting there, so I pulled the lights all the way down. It went dark. I couldn't even find it in between. The manager comes behind me. I'm sitting there, and he says, come to the office. I was like, oh,
this
man,
is it.
I really don't want to lose this job. True story. I'm not making this up. And hopefully I was well liked, and I was neat and clean, and
Yes, sir.
I did a good job. And he went in there, and he started laughing. But he said it real mean for everybody. Come to my office. He got out there and he was laughing. He said, "Man," he said, "I get it, but you can't ever do that again."
That's so
he said, "I want
funny.
you to walk out there and you look sad."
Put on a show.
Yeah. I said, "I will, thanks." He said, "Don't ever do that again." I said, "I won't." I didn't. So I went out there and they said, "What happened?" I said, "Man, you don't want to know it. You just don't want to know. Don't you ever touch those lights."
Right.
But it was just as cool as could be. I was just going to barely hit it. That thing went so bright. Then I turned them jet black. But they did leave. I was just trying to
Turning
get them to
tables.
leave. I was trying to turn tables so we can set us tips before I left there. True story, but I
That
did
is
break
so
the rule.
funny. That is hilarious. You know, it's funny. Sometimes you do things like that just to make things work.
Yeah.
You know, you're just trying to make things work. And I think most people understand it.
Yeah.
You know,
If you wait tables, they do.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
most people
that's
understand.
a hard job.
It's like that old saying that you know, if a man steals a loaf of bread to feed his kids, he did the wrong thing. But most people understand it.
Right.
But it's a whole different feeling for some reason when you catch them in the act of it. It's a whole different feeling. You hear the story and you're like, oh, I can understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I wish I could help him. But you catch him in the act of it, it's like, what are you doing, man? You know, it's just funny how that works. Most people can understand when you break
Yeah.
some rules, but you know, there's always an exception to things.
Exactly.
It's so funny how that works.
Shout out to Mr. Ben if you're watching, Ben.
Good to see you, Mr.
Hope
Ben.
you feel better. I know you're having a little sickness, but I hope you feel better, buddy.
Sir. We got
yeah.
the chat turned on today, too.
Oh, do we?
by the
Do we
way.
have
Yes.
anything?
No, sir.
It could be a good thing, right?
Nothing to worry about. It's smooth sailing.
So,
Yes.
tell me about the little girl. Your little baby.
Oh, she is just wonderful. It is the best thing in the world. And there is you always hear parents talk about when you get to hold that baby, or when it's your baby, and they always say those words to you, and you really do think you get it. You know, It's not like you're dumb. You hear people say, when it's your baby, you'll care differently, and you're like, well, I would hope so. I hope I do. I would imagine that I do. But when you get home from work and it's been raining all day long and you're soaking wet and you're tired and you're sweaty and you ate your lunch 6 hours ago and you're hungry, you come home and you're not in the greatest of moods, but when you get there, you just get to hold her.
Right.
You know, it's this one doesn't do much for me. The cradle, it's cute because you get to see their eyes.
Right.
But when you hold them chest to chest like that, you get to really squeeze on them. It is like this.
Feel that heartbeat.
Oh, it's like a vacuum that just sucks all the bad out of your life. It just takes all the pain away, and it just takes away the whole bad day experience. Everything gets so much better. One thing that I've certainly been shocked upon is just, again, you hear these things all the time growing up and getting ready for the scenario. People always tell you, man, that time flies. Enjoy it while it lasts. That time flies, and day by day, you don't really think about it. But
Right.
the baby's 13 weeks now. And
Wow.
it doesn't feel like 13 weeks. It's, I just can't believe it. But even now already, I see her every day, and I can't exactly remember what she looked like 13 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You already start to lose that information because you're just there with them day by day. And what I'm trying to do is I try to cherish those moments as much as I can. I really do put the phone down. I really try to make sure that there's no TV on. And of course you have things you have to do. You have your laundry dishes, all your normal, homeowner duties. But just having those moments where you can really just soak in and be with that little baby and just enjoy it for the time.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing like it. When she smiles, she laughs, and she jokes around, she's starting to move, and it's that sense of humor just brightens up your day. The laughter's contagious.
It is. It is. Talking about that, I remember my mom and dad used to talk about it. My dad used to work sometimes 24 hours in a row. He had his job where he worked 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, and sometimes he was a foreman at this print shop, so he had to stay sometimes to get his big job out. He'd spend 20, 22, 24 hours sometimes at work.
Ooh.
And he'd sleep on the floor for an hour or two. It was hardcore back then. But Mom said he'd come in at 2 o'clock in the morning and wake us up.
Wow.
Wake me
Right.
up just to hold me, and then she'd put me back to sleep because he hadn't seen me in a couple of days,
Wow.
So, and I get it, I do get that. I really do. It's just, it's amazing. I mean, watching those kids grow like that.
That's a very sweet gesture. That is, honestly, it is kind of like that. Not that I'm working those type of hours.
Right.
I have a lot of respect for that. But at nighttime, when I'm finally settled in, dinner's done, dishes done, and we're really settled into the household, a lot of times the baby sleep somewhere around, from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Right.
And then, my wife will get her put into the bed and everything gets taken care of. And then the baby falls back asleep for the rest of the night.
Right.
But I hate it. I can't stand it when she sleeps. It's cool because you get stuff to get done. I just want to wake her up because I haven't been there all day the way she has. My wife's been at home with her all day.
She's glad she's asleep.
Yeah, she's great. It's so grateful she gets a moment to just,
exactly.
But me, on the other hand, I'm like, wake up. I just want to
nudge her a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to hang out with you, But it's, it's so funny how that works. Let's see. We have somebody in the chat saying that the most difficult decisions are the ones that you have to make for your children. Ooh, I bet that's probably the case too. The most difficult decisions are the ones you have to make for your children. And why do you think that is? Is it because when it's you, if you make a bad decision, it's like, oh, well, I messed up. But if you make a bad decision for your children, you're like, oh, I've really just messed them up.
Wow. My first thought would be that, first of all, the child's not going to agree with it because they want to do something that's either not safe or not kosher, if you will.
Wow.
And so the parents are like, I'm going to make this decision for you. Most of the time we make decisions for our children. They're like, oh, Mom, oh, Dad, I don't want to do that.
Right.
And it's hard.
I bet.
Yeah. Hey, our daughter, she turned 14. She wanted to go to the mall by herself with a couple of her friends. And the mall was not really the greatest place to go at 15, even back then. So she said, Dad, I want to go. I said, you can't go. It's not safe, babe. She said, but Dad, my friends are going. I said, well, I'll tell you what. Let's make a deal. I said, get in the car. So all three of us got in the car. And went up there. I said, I'm going to ask somebody. You ready? I said, see that policeman? So I walked over to the policeman. I said, sir, I want to ask you a question. I want your honest opinion. He said, okay. I said, this is our daughter. She wants to come to the mall and walk around with her friends. If this was your daughter, would you let her do it? He said, absolutely not. He said, young lady, you stay with your mom and dad. And she's got tears in her eyes. She said, thank you, Dad. She got back in the car and we went home.
That's awesome.
True story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She said, thank you.
But I didn't want to just sit there and say, you're not going. I wanted to show it to her.
Right.
Sometimes, we have to lead by example. We have to show things and not just always say, you can't do this or can't do that. I tried to do it best I could, but sometimes you just got to say no.
Right. Yes. That is an excellent story. I love to hear that. There's so many times you look back on life and you're like, that person who was telling me no or sometimes telling you yes, they had your best intentions in mind. But as a kid, you're just so narrow-sighted. It's just such shallow thinking, and you don't think nothing of it because you just want to hang out with your friends. You're just trying to have a good time.
That's all it is.
And a lot of times it's, you're not really thinking that you're up to no good, and you're wondering why. It's like they don't trust me. It's like they don't want me to go out and have fun.
You don't want me to have fun, Mom.
Right. Well, it's I want you to have fun. I just don't want you over there.
We want you to have fun next week so you're around.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. We're thinking long term.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so funny. That's a really good concept to think about. I try to take that and apply that to life as my first child, and so I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but I want to make the least amount as possible.
Yeah.
And to think about that, to lead by example, not just say no. Yeah. Give them a reason, give them some try to teach them along the way.
Well, see, that's it. That's to me, that's the biggest thing, and you will, because you're a teacher now. You teach kids, you teach adults martial arts, and I've done it for 50 years. And the thing is, the more you teach other people, the better you get, because you learn more.
Right.
And it's true. It's just like making a hard decision or tough decision. You learn yourself. I learn more from my students than probably they learn from me through the years.
Wow.
You get educated in a different way. That's how I look at it anyway.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I know it's one thing. I certainly learn a lot sitting here hanging out with you, and I get to learn a lot from having people hang out in the chat and give us some more concepts to chew on. And one decision that is not going to be a hard one to make is that I'm going to be back here Tuesday next week to do this podcast with you again.
Yep.
But it is now past 8 o'clock. We ran over just a little bit.
Okay.
I know you guys have an evening to get to and your whole life to take responsibilities and do your thing. But wanted to take just a quick second to say thanks so much for hanging out with us. We do appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your input in the chat. And Master Archer, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure.
Guys, thanks a lot. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Have a
good
great
night.
rest of your evening.
Absolutely.